Stay with me a moment. Do not brace. If you have been waiting on an answer big enough to match what you carry, stay. If the answer came small and something in you went flat, stay. If you have been standing at the wrong river, wanting a better one, stay. Right now, while you listen, I will put words on the part you have kept unspoken, not even to yourself. It was never that my answer felt hard, it was that it felt small. Hard you could have taken. You have taken hard before. Hard has a shape you respect, a price you can name afterward, and a mark you can point at later and say, "Look what that one took out of me." What came instead was plain. A short instruction. One ordinary motion, the kind nobody would put in a story. And you went flat. Not angry. Flat. The way a person goes flat when the name called out is not theirs. I know that flatness. It does not offend me. I have seen it in braver people than you feel like at this moment. One man came a very long way for an answer. He brought silver. He brought gold. He brought a letter from a king. He arrived with horses and stopped outside the place where a prophet lived, in a country he did not respect. And the answer came out to him in the mouth of a servant. One line, barely a sentence. Go down to the river and wash. He did not say it was too hard. He said something else. That is the part almost nobody repeats. He said he had it all planned. In his head, the scene was already written. The prophet comes out. The prophet stands in front of him. The prophet calls on my name over him. The prophet passes a hand across the place. That was the version he had rehearsed on the road. That was the size he had budgeted for. Instead, a servant walked out with one sentence and walked back in. Nobody came out to stand. Nobody made a gesture. Nothing about it looked like the end of a journey that long. He turned and went away in a rage, not because it was too much to do, because it was too little to be true. Hear how close that sits to your own life. You have prayed about something for a long stretch now. You asked for a sign, and you meant a real one, not a flicker, a sign with weight to it. You did not say that part out loud, because saying it out loud would have sounded like bargaining, and you have never once let yourself be caught bargaining with me. What arrived was smaller than the problem. A phrase in something you read. A steadiness that showed up on an ordinary afternoon and never bothered to explain where it had come from. A plain thought that came back twice. Call her. Go back. Say the thing. Stop the thing. You held it up against what you are carrying, the way a person holds a receipt up against a bill and sees at once that the numbers are nowhere near each other. It did not match. So you set it down. You did not disobey me. You compared. And in the comparing, you decided that a small answer could not be mine, because your trouble is not small. I will not argue with you about the size of your trouble. I know its weight to the ounce. I know the hour it wakes you. I know how many times you have done the arithmetic on it and gotten the same number. Here's what I will say. The size of what I ask has nothing to do with the size of what I am doing. You have been reading those two as one figure. They were never one figure. Small does not mean I misheard you. Small does not mean you got the reduced version. Small means the heavy part is already finished, and it was not finished by you. That sentence is going to take a while to land. Stay with me while it does. Let me show you what that landing looks like in your own week, not in his. You keep a private tally. Nobody taught you to keep it. Nobody checks it but you. Every time something costs you, the tally goes up. Somewhere under your ribs, you wait for a payout that matches the number. An answer walks in small. The first thing you do is not thank me. The first thing you do is reach for the tally. You hold the two side by side. The number, the answer. You look for a match. There almost never is one. I was never running the same math you were. Think of the last time this happened to you. Not to somebody in a story. To you. In a room you know. On a day you could still name if you tried. You had been carrying something across a long season, a worry that woke you before the alarm did, a name you kept bringing back to me at odd hours, a hope you had stopped saying out loud, because saying it out loud made the waiting louder. Then one plain thing arrived, a word from a friend that landed wrong at first and right on the second pass. A door that opened for no clear reason on a day nothing else went your way. A line from a page you almost skipped. You felt the tally rise before you even decided to check it. Is that it? That is what all that asking gets me. You did not say it in those words. You may not have said it in any words at all, but the shape of the thought was that plain and that fast. You have felt it more than once. Look straight at that reflex for a moment. It is not cold. It is not ungrateful. It is what a heart does when it carries weight with no one to set it down beside. Weight makes a person start counting. That is not a flaw in you. That is what waiting does to anyone still awake enough to feel it. But hear me on the actual math. You have been running it wrong the whole while. You were treating the size of the answer as the receipt for the size of the cost. It was never that. The cost was already covered, somewhere you could not watch. The answer you got was not the payment. It was only the news that the payment had already gone through. That changes everything about how small is allowed to look. A small envelope can carry news of a very large thing. Nobody argues that a letter is small, so the news inside must be small too. You know that. You have opened a short letter and felt your whole year turn over in your hands. You did not weigh the paper. You read the words. Stop weighing the paper. The tally you keep is not wrong to hold. I do not want you to stop noticing what things have cost you. I am telling you the tally and the answer were never supposed to be checked against each other, line for line. I do not pay you back the way a ledger pays a debt. I pay you back the way a father meets a child at the door, not with a sum that matches what was owed, with everything he has, handed over whole, whether the child's count is even or not. You have been treating my gifts like installments, waiting for the next one to be bigger, so the running total finally looks fair. It will not work that way. I'm telling you now so you can stop expecting it to. Every plain thing I hand you already carries the whole of what I am. Nothing about me arrives in pieces. Let the tally rest for a moment. You do not have to erase it. Just stop reading it against what I send you. Read it against nothing. Set it down. The way you would set down a book you were checking a fact in, once you already know the fact is true. You do not owe me an apology for keeping the tally. Life taught you to keep it. But a father does not ask his child to list off gratitude before the next meal arrives. He just feeds the child again. That is closer to how this works than anything your ledger has measured. Small will keep arriving. Some days it will look too plain to matter. Let it. The weight was never carried by the size of what lands in your hands. It was carried the whole while, somewhere you never had to check. Now come back with me to the man who first showed you this. People have called that man proud for a very long time. I never have. Look at what he had already done before he ever got angry. He asked for help. He traveled days to get it. He carried a letter that said, in plain terms, "This is beyond me and beyond everyone I command. A man that far into asking has already spent his dignity. He left it somewhere back on the road." What broke in him was not pride. It was a picture. He had been carrying that picture the whole way. Everyone carries one. You are carrying yours as you listen. I know the details of yours. I know them better than you do, because you have edited it so many times you can no longer remember the first version. There is a phone call in it. The voice on the other end breaks a little before it says yes. There is a room that goes quiet at the exact second the thing turns. There is a sentence, and you have rehearsed the sound of that sentence so often that you would know it in any voice, in any accent, at any volume. There may be a face in it, finally looking at you the way you stopped expecting to be looked at. You did not build that picture because you are greedy. You built it because the ache is real. A real ache asks for a real event, something with a before and an after, something you could tell. So when the answer arrives without any of that staging, something in you goes cold. And the coldness feels like doubt, and the doubt feels like a failure of faith. And you have been quietly punishing yourself for it ever since. Stop punishing yourself for that. It is not doubt. It is disappointment. And disappointment is only what love does when it meets a shape smaller than the one it prepared for. I am not scandalized by your reaction. I have watched it rise in people I loved and used, and never put down for it. But hear what I'm telling you underneath the comfort. You were not grieving my silence. You were grieving the ceremony. The man at the gate was not asking for something wicked. He wanted a moment. He wanted someone to come out and stand in front of him and say, my name over him, out loud, where he could hear it. He wanted a hand to pass over the place. He wanted it witnessed. And I understand exactly why. If it happens like that, it is real. If it happens like that, it is a story with a shape. If it happens like that, he came for a reason, and the journey counted. That is the part you have never let yourself look at directly. You do not only want the outcome, you want the outcome to be worth what it cost you to ask. You want the answer to weigh what the waiting weighed. If it comes small and quiet and without any ceremony at all, then what do you do with the years? Where do those go? What was all that watching for if the thing that finally moved could have moved on a plain, unremarkable day without warning anyone? That is the real ache, not disobedience, accounting. You are trying to make the size of the answer settle a debt that the answer was never holding. Let me be very plain with you. I am not going to make your waiting mean nothing. I keep it, all of it. Every hour of it is with me, and none of it was wasted or misplaced. But I will not price the answer to match the waiting. That is not how I give. If I did, the answer would stop being a gift and start being a wage, and you would have earned a fraction of it, and you would spend the rest of your life defending your fraction. Small is not an insult to what you went through. Small is the shape of a thing that is already paid for. And notice where you are standing while you run that arithmetic. On a bank. In front of water you did not choose, looking upstream at water you would have chosen. You have held that position so long that it stopped feeling like a position at all. It feels like good sense. It is not. It is a man on a bank grading a river he was sent to walk into. Here is what the paid-for shape looks like when it finally lands in your hands. And here is why you keep almost missing it. A gift that costs you nothing puts you on guard. You know something about free things. They usually have a hook buried in them somewhere. So when something arrives light, your first move is not joy. It is inspection. You turn it over. You check the seams. You wait for the part where it turns out smaller than it looked, or comes with a bill attached, one nobody mentioned up front. You have opened enough light packages in your life to know that the light ones are usually the ones with the second half of the price still folded up somewhere inside them. I am not surprised by that instinct. The world trained it into you. The world was not always wrong to. But I am not the world. What I hand you has no hook in it. Anywhere. Turn it over as many times as you need to. You will never find the seam. There is not one. Still you check. You have checked 100 small answers this way, turning each one in the light, looking for what it will cost you later, unable to simply hold a good thing, not without pricing it first. That habit did not start with me. It started somewhere back before you can remember, in a place where kindness usually came with a string on it. You learned to find the string before it found you. That was not weakness, and it was not suspicion for its own sake. It was a young person doing the only sensible thing available in a house where kindness always came due later. I want to name that plainly. Naming it is most of what unwinds it. You do not trust small gifts. Somewhere behind you, small gifts turned out to be traps, or leashes, or the opening line of a debt you would spend years repaying. You built a very good eye for strings. That eye kept you safe for a stretch of your life. I am not asking you to throw it away. I want you to notice one thing. It has started firing on me too, and I am not one of the people who trained it. The eye you built to catch other people has turned itself on the one hand in your life that has never once closed around something after handing it over. Look again at the plain thing I handed you. Turn it in the light one more time. You are so good at that by now. There is no string. There is no second bill, arriving later with your name on it, in different ink. There is no version of this where you accept the small answer now, and I collect on it in a season you cannot see yet. That is not how I have ever kept a book. A father hands his child bread. He does not stand at the table afterward. He does not total what the bread is worth in future obedience. He hands the bread because the child was hungry and he had bread. The whole exchange ends there. You have been living as if every gift opens a new page in a running account. I'm telling you, there is no ledger behind me at all. There never was one. I do not remember what I have given you, not the way you remember what you owe. That is what a paid-for thing actually feels like. Once you stop bracing for the catch, it feels almost too plain to trust. It feels like nothing will be asked of you afterward, because nothing will. You can let your shoulders down around a gift like that, the same way you let them down around someone who has never made you pay for their kindness later. Not once, in all the years you have known them. A river has no string on it either. Say that plainly, because you have been checking the water the same way you check a gift, turning it, looking for the fee. There is nothing in it to find. No hook under the surface, no bill waiting on the far bank, just water, and one plain sentence that arrived with it. I am that steady. I've always been that steady. You have simply been waiting for the string, in a place where there has never been one to find. There is a simpler test than turning the gift over and over, looking for the catch. Ask what it would cost you to just say, thank you, and mean it. Nothing else attached, not thank you, followed by a plan to repay it later. Just thank you. Then let your hands stay open for whatever comes next. That is the whole of what receiving looks like. It is not careless. It is not naive. It is only a person who finally stopped bracing, standing in a kitchen with bread already in his hands, eating it instead of weighing it. That is the picture to keep. Not a courtroom, a kitchen, not a case being made. A meal already on the table, going a little cold while you decide whether it is safe to sit down. It is safe. It was always safe. Sit down. There is a habit sitting underneath all of this, and it is older than the thing you are waiting on. You rehearse, not out of vanity, out of care. You have run the same conversation 4 times in the car before walking in. You have decided ahead of time what the other person would have to say for it to count as real. You have written both halves of an argument you may never have. You got the other half wrong. You rehearsed it anyway. A rehearsed pain arrives smaller than a fresh one. You do it with me as well. There is a private list in you of what a genuine answer would look like. You have never read that list out loud. Reading it out loud would make it sound like a demand, and you would rather be humble than heard. The list is not the problem. Where you placed yourself on it is the problem. Look at your own picture again. In every version of it, you are in the room. You are present at the turning. You are watching when it happens, and you can feel the exact second the weight lifts, and afterward you can describe it to someone in order. Of course you wrote it that way. If you are not watching, how would you know it happened? If nothing visible moves, how do you tell an answer from an ordinary day? So a plain instruction arrives, and it lands badly, and now you know why. It gives you no part to play, except the doing of it. There is no audience in it, no staging, nothing to say afterward that would make anyone's eyes widen. Water is like that too. Nobody claps on a riverbank. There is no part of walking into a river that anyone would describe afterward. no gesture in it worth repeating, nothing you could carry home as evidence that you were the one who went in. Which is exactly why that was the thing I picked. Nobody sat you down and taught you this. You absorbed it slowly, the way a person absorbs the temperature of the house they grew up in. Be useful. Carry more than your share. Be the one they call. Whatever you are given, add something to it, so that no one can say you only received. That is a decent way to be a worker. It is a poor way to be a son, a poor way to be a daughter. Because when I ask you for something anyone at all could do, it does not land in you as mercy. It lands as being told you are not needed. Hear me. You are needed. Just not for the heavy part. The heavy part was never on your list of assignments. It was never withheld from you either. It was simply already finished before you got there. The way a road is already finished before the person walking it ever thinks about who laid it. That man wanted to hand something over. He came with silver and gold. He brought them for the same reason you rehearse. He wanted to be a participant, not a recipient. A participant can hold his head up. A recipient has to be looked at. And a river asks nothing of a man. It does not accept silver. There is nothing to hand it. You cannot be impressive in a river. You just walk in, and the water does not care who you were on the shore. And that is the exact humiliation he could not bear. You are not so different, and that is not an accusation. It is a relief if you let it be. Because it means the flatness you felt was never a sign of weak faith. It was the sound of a role being taken away from you. A role you were tired of anyway. A role you have been performing so long that you cannot remember volunteering for it. Somewhere back there you picked the role up because carrying it was the only way to be certain of your place in the room, and nobody ever came by afterward to tell you the part had ended. Put it down. Not the ache. The role. Caring what happens is not the problem. I am asking you to stop auditioning inside your own rescue. Watch what auditioning has looked like in your own hands. You will know it when it starts again. You rehearse your worth before you ask for help. You mention what you already tried, so I will know you did not come here lazy. You list the years you carried this alone, so the asking will not look like the first thing you reached for. You say sorry for needing anything at all, right in the middle of the actual need, as if the need itself were the thing calling for forgiveness. All of that happens in the first 30 seconds, before you have said one true word about what is actually wrong, and by the time you get there, you are already tired. None of that moves me. Not because it offends me, it does not, but because I was never scoring it. You have been performing for a judge. He left the room long ago, if he was ever in it at all. I was already leaning toward you before you opened your mouth. The list you keep updating has nothing to add to that. This is the part that costs you the most, and I want you to see it clearly. Auditioning does not only slow down the asking, it changes what you can receive, once the answer comes. A performer cannot simply take a gift. A performer has to fold it into the act, has to make it look earned, has to explain the timing, so it reads like payoff instead of mercy. You have been doing this with plain answers for years, turning a free thing into a reward, one you can defend if anyone asks how you got it. And every time you dress a plain answer up as something you earned, you make it a little harder to take the next one without putting the same costume on it first. Nobody's asking. I built this without an audience. You built the audience yourself, out of old rooms where being watched decided whether you were safe. Put the list down. I know what is on it already. Every line. None of it changed what I was going to give you. I am not withholding until the performance gets better. I never once graded it. There was never a version of this where a better performance bought a better answer, because what I was going to give you had been settled somewhere your performance could not reach. What is left, once you stop auditioning, is smaller than you expect, and stranger than you expect. It is just you, standing in front of me, hands open, nothing rehearsed to say. That is not weakness. That is the one posture where a gift can actually land. There is nothing in your other hand pretending you already paid for it. And the water stays where it is while you decide. It does not rise. It does not dry up. It is not waiting to find out whether you show up as the finished version of yourself or the one still practicing, because it was never told to check. It has been the same depth the whole season you have spent standing beside it, arguing. You are allowed to arrive with nothing prepared. You are allowed to ask without the footnotes. You are allowed to let the plain thing be plain. Let yourself be someone it was simply given to, not someone who finally earned enough credit to collect. There is no version of this where you show up too plain. Too plain is not a category I use. You keep waiting to feel finished enough to knock. I already opened the door before you started rehearsing. Come as you are, not as the version you are still practicing to become. That version is not more welcome than this one. It never will be. Go back with me to him one more time, still turning to leave. He was already leaving. That is the part to hold on to. The horses were turned around and the whole company was moving, and the answer he had traveled all that way for was behind him, getting smaller. No one in charge stopped him. Not the prophet who stayed inside. Not the king who wrote the letter. Not one important person in that entire story took a single step to save him from his own disappointment. His servants did. Men who worked for him. Men who had watched him be furious before and knew exactly what it cost to speak into it. They had no rank. They had nothing to gain from him listening. If he rode home unchanged, their lives went on exactly the same. They came near anyway. That word matters. They came near, which means they walked toward the anger instead of away from it, which almost nobody does. And they did not scold him. They called him Father. Then they asked him one question, and that question is the hinge of the whole thing, and I'm going to give it to you word for word in a moment. First, notice who it came from, not from the impressive source, not from a voice out of the sky, not from the man of God, not from anyone whose opinion he would have written down. It came from the people standing closest to him with the least to gain. That is almost always how the true thing reaches you, not with credentials, not with volume. Here's why it works that way. And it is not by accident. Rank changes what a person can afford to say to you. Anyone with a title to protect will trim the truth. So will anyone with a name riding on the outcome. So will anyone with something to gain from your approval. Not out of malice. Out of the plain math of protecting themselves. The higher the cost of being wrong, the softer the sentence gets. On the way out of their mouth. You have watched that happen in rooms you were sitting in, and you knew while it was happening, and afterward you told yourself you had probably imagined the softening. That is not a flaw in people with rank. It is simply the price of having something to lose. The ones with nothing to lose do not run that math. They do not soften the sentence. There is no standing behind them worth protecting. What comes out of a person like that has not been filtered, not through what it might cost them if you did not like hearing it. That is why it lands so plain. And that is why it lands so true. Something in you has always been able to tell the difference between a sentence that was weighed before it left someone's mouth and a sentence that simply left. You have met voices like that, maybe only a few, in your whole life. A voice with no stake in managing what you think of it afterward. When a sentence like that reaches you, something behind your ribs knows it first, before your mind has even finished the sentence. The way your body knows real weight, not a description of weight, the real thing. You cannot fake that knowing. You cannot talk yourself out of it either. It arrives the way cold water arrives, all at once and without asking whether you were ready for it, and it is already true by the time you get around to thinking about it. I use those voices on purpose, not because I could not speak with weight of my own. I could level a mountain with one word, if that served you. But a voice with rank attached gives you a reason to argue with the messenger instead of the message. Take the rank away, and there is nothing left to argue with, except the truth itself. Standing there with no one propping it up, that is also why the plain thought that keeps returning to you carries more than you have given it credit for. It has no voice at all. It cannot be waved off as someone's tone, or someone's timing, or someone's own unsettled history leaking into what they said to you. It is simply there, again, saying the same thing it said the first day, asking nothing from you, except that you finally hear it. You have waited for a messenger grand enough to trust, for longer than you would like to admit. I have been sending you the same message the whole while, through the only kind of voice that was ever going to carry it honestly, the kind with nothing riding on, whether you believe it. Stop waiting for the messenger to change. Start weighing the message on its own. Think about the last time somebody told you something plain about your own life and you felt your jaw tighten. It probably was not a sermon. It was more ordinary than that. A sentence from someone who has no reason to flatter you and no interest in managing you. Or it came without a person at all. A thought that keeps returning. It never raises its voice. It never threatens you. It just comes back, unchanged, on the 4th day and the 10th day and the 40th, saying the same plain thing it said the first time. You have been calling that noise. You have been waiting for a voice with more weight behind it. I have been speaking in the plain one the whole while. Stop here with me for a second before we go on. Let your eyes go soft. Do not aim them at anything. Let whatever is in front of you blur a little at the edges, the way it does when you stop trying to see and simply let the light in. That is all. No effort. Nothing to get right. Notice what your face does when you stop pointing your eyes at something. Notice that something behind your forehead lets go a ½ inch. You've been holding your gaze the way you hold your life, aimed and braced, waiting to catch the important moment, the instant it arrives. Now say one short sentence out loud, in whatever voice you have. Not a whisper, if a whisper feels like hiding. Say it plainly. The sentence is this. Let it be this small. Say it once. Hear how your own room sounds afterward. Something in you will argue. Let it argue. You are not signing anything. You are letting a sentence exist in the air that has never been allowed there before. Those 5 words are not surrender to a lesser life. They are your hands coming off the size of it. Let your eyes come back now. Whatever you were looking at is still there. Nothing about the room changed, and something about you did, and you may not be able to name it yet, and you do not have to. Now you are ready to hear what the servants asked him. It is the most useful question anyone in that story ever spoke, and the man it was aimed at had already turned his back. Here it is, 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 13, word for word the way it was written down and kept for you. And his servants came near and spake unto him and said, My father, if the prophet had bid thee do some great thing, wouldest thou not have done it? How much rather then, when he saith to thee, Wash and be clean? Read that again slowly, because everything I have been saying to you is sitting inside it. They did not tell him he was arrogant. They did not tell him to humble himself. Notice what they actually did. They told him what he would have done. If the word had been a great thing, you would have done it. That is not an accusation. That is a compliment, and it is true, and he knew it was true, and that is exactly why it stopped him in the road. You would have done the great thing. Hear that about yourself. If I had asked you for a year of your life, you would have given it. If I had asked you to walk somewhere far and come back changed, you would have gone. If I had asked for a hard fast, a hard apology, a hard cost, a hard silence, you would have paid it and never once complained about the price. You are not lazy. You have never been lazy. Nobody who has carried what you have carried is lazy. That is the whole point of what they said to him. The question was never whether he was willing to work. He was extremely willing to work. His willingness was the strongest thing he owned. Then comes the turn, and it is only 4 small words in an old language. How much rather then? How much rather, it is the plainest argument in the world. If you would do the expensive thing, why does the cheap thing stop you? There's only one honest answer, and you already know it, and it is not a shameful one. Because the expensive thing lets you keep a hand in it. If I ask a great thing, then when the change comes, part of the change is yours. You paid a share. You can look at what happened and know which part was me and which part was you, and the part that was you is what makes it bearable to receive it all. But wash and be clean. Where is your share in that? Nowhere. That is not a flaw in the instruction. That is the design. I am not giving you less. I'm taking your contribution out of the arithmetic, because your contribution was never what was going to carry it. Sit with that instead of arguing with it. What you have been calling a lack of faith has actually been an unpaid invoice you kept trying to hand me. You have been standing there with your silver out, saying, "Let me put something in." And I have been saying, "Go and wash." Not because your silver offends me, because there is nothing left to buy. The heavy part is finished. It was finished before you asked. It was finished in a way you did not watch and cannot verify and would not have been able to help with, and that is precisely why it will hold when you are too tired to hold anything. What is left for you is small on purpose. Not because you are small, because the weight already moved, and what remains is only the walking in. Had the price been high, you would have paid it. I know that about you. I never doubted it for a second. I am asking for the small thing instead, and I am asking for it because I love you, and because I would rather have you free than impressive. Participant, recipient. You have heard both words already. What you have not counted is what the first one costs you every single time you pick it up. Think about what you actually reach for when trouble comes, not what you say you reach for. What you reach for a plan, a fast, a discipline, a version of yourself who finally gets serious enough to deserve the turn. You are, in that reaching, trying to be a participant in your own rescue one more time. A participant gets to keep a hand in the story. A hand in the story is a hand you can point to later and say, "Look, I did not just receive this. I built part of it. I understand the reach. I am not scolding it. But hear what it costs you every time you make it. It keeps the weight on your shoulders exactly where I have been trying to take it off. Every plan you build to earn the turn is a plan that treats the turn as still coming. That is the one belief I need you to put down. What you are being asked to do now is not to build. It is to take hold of what was already built. That is a harder thing for you than building ever was, and I know exactly why. Building lets you measure yourself against the size of the task. Receiving has no scale on it at all. You either open your hands, or you do not. There is nothing in between to be graded on. Open them anyway. Not because you have finally earned the right. You never needed one. But because the thing being handed to you is only going to reach you through open hands. And closed hands, no matter how sincere, cannot hold water. Now hear the other half of his complaint, because you have made it too, and more recently than you think. He had better rivers at home. He said so out loud. Wide water, clean water, water with a name people knew. Are they not better, he asked, than all the waters of this small country? And here's the thing nobody admits. He was right about the water. The rivers he named were better rivers. The one he was sent to is muddy and low and unimpressive, and anyone who has seen both would agree with him. He was not being ridiculous. He was being accurate. You have run the same comparison about your own situation, and you are right about that too. And being right about it has not moved you one step off the bank you are standing on. He was simply accurate about the wrong question. The water was never the power. The word was. The river was only the address the word gave him. Sit with that a moment. It is the piece you have been missing this whole while, and it is small enough to slip past you if you move too fast. An address is not the gift. It is only where the gift agreed to meet you. Picture a letter. It tells you to collect a package at a certain door. You do not fall in love with the door. You do not compare that door to grander doors across town. You do not wonder if you were shorted. You go where the letter said. The door was never the point. No one who has ever collected a package cares what the door looked like. Not once the package is in their hands. You have been standing in front of doors your whole life. grading them. This one is too plain. This one is in the wrong part of town. This one does not look like where good news arrives. And the whole while the door was never claiming to be beautiful. It was only claiming to be correct. You have spent a whole life on that grading, and not one of those doors was ever competing in the contest you had quietly entered it in without telling anybody. Here is what makes this hard to accept. I will not pretend it is easy. Somewhere back before you knew me this well, you learned to read the setting as a clue about the outcome. Grand room, grand news. Plain room, small news. That reading has worked often enough in the world you grew up in, so you trust it more than you trust me. Most days, without even noticing you are doing it. Unlearn this rule, even though it has served you outside of this. It was never a rule about me. It was a rule about people. People do sometimes save their best rooms for their best news. I do not work that way. I do not need a room to prove anything. My power does not borrow weight from the address it shows up at. Picture the plainest room you can think of. Bare walls, one window, nothing on the table. Now picture the same instruction spoken in that room, the one you would have trusted right away if it had come from somewhere grander. Nothing about the instruction changed. Only the room did. If you would have obeyed it in the grand room, you already know the instruction was never the problem. Your own plain river is doing exactly that. It was never trying to look impressive. It was only ever telling you where to go. The power was never going to come from the water, never going to come from the room, never going to come from anything you could show someone afterward as proof that this one counted. The power comes from the word attached to the address. It always has. Every river you have ever stood beside, waiting for it to look important enough to trust, was only ever waiting on you to stop reading the water and start reading the word. You will meet other plain rivers after this one. That is worth knowing now, before you set this thought down. The pattern will not stop after one obedience. Somewhere ahead of you there is another address. It will look too ordinary to hold what you need. You will feel the same pull toward a grander one. The same argument will still be true. The water was never the power then either. Carry this forward, not as a rule you memorized, as a door you have already walked through once, one you know how to walk through again. Bravery was never the requirement at this door. You do not have to feel brave to walk through it. You only have to stop grading the frame long enough to notice the instruction was never about the frame at all. Step through. The room will not announce itself as important, and the water will not look any better once your feet are in it, and neither of those was ever the point. You keep proposing better rivers to me. You do it kindly. You do it in prayer, in the voice you use when you are trying not to sound demanding. There is a person you keep naming, because if that person changed, everything downstream of them would change. There is a timing you keep offering me, because that timing would make sense of the last 2 years. There is an outcome you have described to me so often and so carefully that you could recite it in your sleep, and every version of it is reasonable, and you are not wrong that it would be better water. You are only asking the wrong question about it. You have been asking which river is best. I have been telling you which river is yours. Those are not the same question, and no amount of being right about the first one moves you one step closer to the second. Name yours for a moment, quietly, the way you would name it to no one else. You have a river you keep proposing to me. Maybe it is a different outcome entirely, a door you wanted opened, not the one standing open now. Maybe it is a different timeline. This settled a season ago, not still open on a day like this one. Maybe it is a different method, a clean, dramatic turn, not the slow, plain walking you have actually been asked to do. Whatever it is, you have described it to me more than once, carefully, in the voice you use when you are trying hard not to sound like you are giving orders. I have heard every version. I am not offended by any of them. Wanting a better river is not rebellion. It is only what a person does while they wait. They draft other paths. They picture the version that would hurt less. They build in their mind a road, one that looks easier than the one under their actual feet. But here is what all your careful proposals have in common. I want you to see the pattern. Not just the newest entry. Every one of them treats the problem as the address. Not one of them touches the actual instruction. The instruction has not changed. No matter which river you propose instead. Go and wash was never about which river was most convenient. It was about whether you would go at all. You could get the better river tomorrow. The outcome you have been asking for, handed to you exactly the way you pictured it. And the instruction underneath would still be the same instruction. Trust what looks too plain to matter. Do the small thing, without waiting for it to feel large enough to justify the waiting. A better river does not retire that instruction. It only puts off the moment you finally practice it. So let me stack it the way you have been stacking it for yourself, and let me do it out loud, since you have never once said this list where anyone could hear it. If the answer had arrived with a room in it, you would have taken it. If it had come with a voice loud enough to move the windows, you would have taken it. If it had come with a hand held over the place, and my name said out loud, and one witness standing near enough to describe it afterward, you would have taken it, and never once asked whether it was really mine. If it had cost you a year, you would have paid the year. If it had cost you the road, you would have walked it. If it had asked for the silver, you would have opened the bag before I finished the sentence. None of that was refused. Hear the difference? It was not refused. It was simply not needed. And not needed is a harder word than no. If you have been reading that as being handed less, read it again. If you have been reading it as my way of saying the trouble was never that heavy, read it again. If you have been reading it as the cheaper version of what other people got, set that one down first, because it is the one doing the most damage. No leaves you something to do. No leaves the year still in your hands, ready to be offered somewhere else, and it lets you say you tried. Not needed takes the year out of your hands entirely. Not needed says the thing you had been saving to spend was never the price of anything. That is the wall you keep walking into. Not my silence. My having been enough already before you got here. And look at what your own stack gives away, now that it is lying there in the open. Every line of it is about what you would have brought. Not one line is about what I would have done. You have spent the whole season pricing your own share and calling the price faith. You built that stack for a reason, and the reason was good. A person who has nothing to offer feels like a person who can be sent away. So you kept something in your hand at all times, and you called it doing your part. And it has been the one thing standing between you and the water this whole while. Set the stack down. The water in front of you is not asking for one item on it. Not the year, not the road, not the silver, not the room, not the voice, not the witness. It is asking for your feet, and that is the entire list, and it has been the entire list since the day the word first went out. That is why I have not been arguing the river with you. It was never the actual request. You could win every case. About which water is cleaner, which door is grander, which timeline is kinder, and you would still be standing exactly where you are now, holding the same plain thing you have been asked to do since the day I first asked it. So bring me the river you want, if you need to name it once more. I'm not going to silence it. But then set it beside the one you were actually given. Ask which one you have any power at all to change today. Only one of them is yours to walk into. The other is only yours to keep wishing for. Walk into the one that is yours. Leave the other one on the shelf. The shelf where you keep the plans that never needed your help in the first place. Breathe with me before we go on. 3 of them, slow, one at a time. Not to relax, to let something settle that has been standing up in you for months. The first one, in and out, for the ceremony. The scene you wrote, the moment you have been waiting to witness. Let that go out with the air. You are not throwing away hope. You are only setting down the staging of it. The second one, slower. This one is for the better river, the one you keep naming to me. Breathe it in, and let it be true that it would have been good, and let it out anyway. The third one, all the way in and all the way down. This one is for the plain thing you already know how to do. You have known it for a while now. You've been waiting to feel ready. Breathe out and stop waiting to feel ready. Stay in that quiet a second longer than feels needed. That man finally turned around. Not because someone convinced him the river was beautiful, because his servants asked him a question he could not answer with his pride. And notice which way it points. Everything he considered better was up. Bigger cities, bigger water. His own country, his own reputation, his own scale. What he was sent to was down. The lowest river in the world, in a country he looked down on. He went down anyway. He did the plain thing he had been told, the ordinary way, without one witness who mattered to him. And what he had traveled all that distance for was waiting for him there. Not because the water was special, because the word was. And the direction itself is carrying something. Up, down. Those two words are doing more work here than they look like they are doing. Up was never available to him, not that day. Every better river he named sat somewhere up from where he actually stood, up in rank, up in comfort, up in how the story would read once he told it. Down was the only direction actually open. Down to the water, down to the plain instruction, down to a country he had spent the whole journey looking down on. You have a direction like that too. Somewhere in your own week there is a down you have been avoiding. Not because it is dangerous, because it does not read well. Down to the apology you have been circling for a while. Down to the plain word you keep dressing up in bigger language, so it sounds less like giving in. Down to the small, unglamorous obedience, instead of the story you would rather be telling about yourself. It is a short walk, whatever it is, and you could be finished with it before the water in the kettle has even come up, and you have been circling it for longer than either of us would want to say out loud. Going down does not feel like winning while you are doing it. It rarely does. Every part of you that learned to protect a name will argue against it, right up until your feet are actually in the water. That argument is not proof you are doing the wrong thing. It is only proof the argument has never once been asked to prove anything. It only objects. It has never once been right. Let it object. Go down anyway. Here is what waits for you at the bottom of the direction you have been avoiding. Not shame, not the loss you have been picturing. The same thing that waited for him. The word, already active, already true, already doing what it said it would do, whether anyone grand was watching or not. The water never had to be impressive for the word to work. Neither does the moment where you finally go down. This is not about looking small in front of people. I'm not asking you to perform humility so someone watching can admire it. I'm asking for the private kind, the kind no one applauds, the kind only I ever see, the kind that changes nothing about how you look and everything about what is finally true underneath it. That is the only kind that was ever going to work. The other kind was just one more way of standing on the bank, refusing the water, waiting for someone to make the moment mean something before you were willing to enter it. Enter it anyway. Let it mean nothing you can perform and everything you actually needed. I am not sending you anywhere impressive. I am sending you to the plain instruction you already have. The one you have kept setting aside, waiting for a bigger one to arrive and confirm it. No bigger one is coming. Not because I am withholding, because the bigger one already happened, and you were not there to see it, and its holding never depended on your eyes being open. Picture the hour when you finally do it. It will not look like anything. That is the first thing to know. No music, no witnesses. Nobody watching your face at the second it turns. Most likely an ordinary hour on an ordinary day, in the middle of something else, with a cup going cold beside you. You will do the plain thing. You will make the call or say the sentence or stop the thing, or go back to the place you have been driving past. It will take less time than a single hour of thinking about it has already taken. And afterward, you will feel strange, not triumphant, lighter and a little useless. It is how you feel after setting down a bag you had stopped noticing you were carrying. You may even feel unemployed. That feeling is not loss. That is what it is like when something comes off your account that you had been paying interest on for years without ever reducing the balance. Most of what you needed is hiding in how plain that hour will be. You picture a morning, one that feels different from the second you wake up, a weight lifted before your feet even touch the floor, a kind of clearness that arrives ahead of the day, one that tells you today is the day. That is not how it comes. It never has been. Not once. Not in the whole span of what I have done in you already. It comes in the middle of something smaller. You are washing a cup. You are waiting for a page to load. You are standing in a line that is moving too slowly, thinking about nothing much, and the plain thing simply rises to the top of your mind, the way it has risen 100 times before, except this time you do it, instead of setting it back down. No trumpet announces that this attempt is the one that counts. You will not know it in the moment. Not that this is the hour you will look back on. You will only know it afterward. And only because you will notice, some days later, that the weight you had been carrying is not where you left it. That is the part I want you ready for. It will feel like an anticlimax. An anticlimax is not the same thing as a failure. You built the picture with music behind it. What you get instead is a Tuesday. The call gets made in a car with the engine still running. The sentence gets said standing in a kitchen with the water still going. The old road gets driven past one more time. And this time the foot actually finds the brake. None of that will look like the answer to years of asking. It will look like nothing at all. And that is exactly the proof I have been trying to hand you the whole way through this. The proof that the size of the doing could never match the size of the ache. The doing was never carrying the ache. I was. Let it be this ordinary. Do the small thing on the plain day, in the middle of whatever you were already doing. Let that be enough of an hour for something that large to move through. Here is what I am putting in place of the ceremony you wanted. I am giving you my presence in the ordinary hour, which is where you actually live, not in the dramatic one. You have almost no dramatic hours. You have thousands of plain ones, and I am in those. And that is worth more to you than any single scene you could have written. I am giving you the end of auditioning. You can stop proving that you deserve the help before you accept it. I am giving you a name you did not earn and cannot lose. You are not a participant in your own rescue. You are a son. You are a daughter. That title is better than any you were trying to work your way into. Feel your shoulders as I say that. Let them come down the half-inch they have been holding. There is nothing at the top of that half-inch except the habit of bracing. And notice what does not happen when you stop. Nothing falls. The thing you were holding up stays exactly where it was. You have been pressing against something that was never resting on you. Test it for 10 seconds. Then 10 more. Nothing moved. That is not luck, and it is not a trick of the mind. That is the same news I have been sending you in an instruction so plain you kept handing it back. You do not have to be impressive to be mine. You never did. The bill you kept trying to pay was written out to a room I was never standing in. You did not get the lesser answer. You got the one that had already been carried, and carried things do not arrive looking heavy. What I have asked of you is light, because the weight moved somewhere you could not see and could not help with. and that is why it holds on the days your own hands have nothing left in them. You will not always understand the size of what I send. You do not have to understand it. You only have to walk down to the water you were sent to and go in and let it be as unremarkable as it is. Amen. One last thing, and it is not a request. Beside this channel, a lamp was left burning low in a place almost nobody has walked into yet. It is where the slow version of this lives, and nothing out here that moves fast ever reaches into it. Nothing is asked of you there. Come or do not. The word already went out either way.